Hi everyone, today let's talk about the GDP numbers. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So GDP came in soft, the economy continues to slow, and we've talked about it a few times at this point. First quarter numbers came in softer than expected, rising at 3%, which to be honest is still quite quick. Expectations were 3.1. Pending home sales fell by 7.7% in April, significantly more than predicted. Again, we're continuing to see slowing economic data, and this is another piece, but just keep in mind that 3% is still a pretty strong number when it comes to GDP. Moving over to fear and greed, we continue to fall off here. Moving down to a 45, you can see this continuing to sell off here. Looking at momentum, continues to stay in greed, but I think that's going to break down here soon. Fear and strength, fear and breadth, fear and put call ratio. Volatility continues to rise, but it's still in neutral. And then safe haven demand sitting in regular greed, while junk bond demand continues to hover in neutral. Moving over to earnings, Costco beat on the top and bottom line, but it wasn't enough to keep the stock higher. Dollar General came in, they beat as well. Ulta Beauty met on the top line, beat on the bottom by a lot. Wonder if those numbers were a little bit off. Otherwise, they doubled earnings. That could be interesting. And then looking at the next major earnings here, CrowdStrike on Tuesday. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see PCE prices came in lower than expected. GDP numbers, they reported 3.1 versus the previous article that said 3 for the price index. And then you can see the quarter over quarter numbers coming in at 1.3 versus 1.6. Previous read was 3.4. So that's a much more significant slowdown on GDP from 3.4 down to 1.3. That definitely makes it look a little bit weaker. And then don't forget tomorrow, PCE pricing as well as CPI here for the Eurozone, and then Chicago PMI here at 9:45. Moving over to Max Pain, this is actually the QQQ. For some reason, the SPY was not loading here today, but we'll look at the Q's options. You can see Max Pain 453, total option 700,000, so it's still pretty decent. Not nearly as much as the SPY. The SPY was closer to 2 million. Put call ratio at 1.5. Bottom of the markets here, probably that 450 level. Wouldn't expect to close below that for tomorrow's session. And then top of the markets, probably 458, 457, right in that zone. We'll see how it plays. But right now, have a big put wall, probably going to find support here at 450. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&Ps, we got another big down day. It was really hanging in there quite well until that last candle of the day, which was quite bearish. Ended up closing about 0.66 down. After hours fell a little bit more, so probably closer to that 0.7, 0.75. Momentum, it is now bearish here on the daily chart, so you would expect that to continue lower. Selling after hours is not great. Big selling on that last candle of the day, which is where pretty much all the volume for the day came, which again is not great. More downside potential in my opinion. In terms of levels here, 520.88 is your next support, highly traded zone there. That is this previous high. If this structure is going to break, if this structure is going to hold, you really need this high here to hold. If it does not, then you're probably looking down at the 55 EMA, down at 516.27. And with how weak this structure looks on the indicators, I kind of expect it to move into that zone, which would be at least another 1.5% lower, but we'll see how that plays. Moving over to the Tasty charts, you can see same thesis, continuing to sell off. We're right at the 21 EMA, right at the mid zone on these ATRs, which are still technically an uptrend. And you can see ATR support 520.09, which is right in line with these previous highs like we mentioned on the previous chart. So very important level there. And then 4-hour chart selling off right to that 144 EMA at that 520.90 area. Lowest ATR band sitting at 520.50. So might find a little bit of support here, but this is a lot of bearish candles in a row, so still definitely short-term bearish with ATR resistance there at 528.97. Moving over to the NASDAQ, significant breakdown here today on the NASDAQ, over 1% down. Momentum not quite bearish, but you would expect it to turn to bearish tomorrow if we get a continuation here. Right now, looking for a push down to that 21 EMA at 446.62. So expect that to continue. You can also see big volume there on that last candle, which was the big sell candle. You can also see we're below all the EMAs and SMAs now on the hourly chart, which is not a great signal either. So short-term bearish, 21 EMA, potential zone of support at that 446.66, which is also these previous highs, just like we saw on the SPY. Moving over to the Tasty chart, same thesis here. Big move down, took out the 8 EMA. That's the first time we've closed below that here on the Tasty charts. 21 EMA sitting at 448.36, might find some support there. ATR support 444.38. So again, right in that same zone, very similar to what we saw on the previous charts. Looking at momentum here, continuing to roll the bearish, no volume. And then looking at that 4-hour chart, you have the 89 EMA, 449.75, right there at support. Lower ATR band, 449.35, so all in that same zone. Could find a little bit of a bounce after this move down. Still bearish conditions on the 4-hour chart. ATR resistance at 458.86, so that would be your upper resistance. But we're on that lowest band. We'll see how this plays out. First one might be a bounce, and then you would expect a lower move, but that's just my thoughts. Right now, this is definitely bearish in a zone where we could find some support. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, the Russell actually managed to turn a profit today. Makes sense. As soon as I get out of the stock, it goes up 0.95, almost 1%, and it was up over 1% to begin with, hit the 21, and then sold off a little bit after hours, and then sold off right at the end of the session. After hours, it ended up a little bit, about 20 cents there. Then you got the Dow continuing to crater. Did get a doji in this previous consolidation, so that's a little bit more interesting than it was yesterday. But it is falling so fast, it's leaving some gaps. Might look for a little bit of a bounce, fill some of those gaps, and then look for a bigger low. Definitely interesting. Similar to what we saw here on the Russell with that big gap down. It's kind of consolidating in this zone right at that 201.88 level, which it did touch on the Wednesday session before bouncing. Momentum on both of these still very bearish, so I wouldn't be looking for anything crazy yet, but you can see some volume did come in on that doji. So something worth looking at, but still everything looks bearish. Moving over to stocks that are moving today, we got two winners. HP up almost 17%, well over that at one point, but it went from around $33 all the way up to $37. Next level is that 40 level. You can see zooming out, that is the high back here from April and May of 2022. Seems like it's probably going to get there. That is a massive candle, huge volume. Seems like this is set to go higher. It's down a little bit after hours, but I would expect that to get bought up. And then similarly here, you got Foot Locker consolidation from about 18 March up to current price. And then it jumped 15%, got all the way up to almost $30 at one point, sold back off to 25. If it can get back above this consolidation here, we're probably headed to these highs back at 34.59. So keep that in mind. Again, massive volume, massive momentum. Everything on both of these looks really good over the short term. Moving over to the Mag 7, down 2.45%. Momentum selling off. RSI breaking down from overbought conditions. If this breaks the SMA on the RSI, that's going to be quite bearish, and that is not a great candle. Filled the gap down to this Friday session, took out the Tuesday and Wednesday sessions. It's right at support, but it's selling after hours, so not a good candle. This is the first real sign of weakness that we've seen on the Mag 7 really since back here at the end of April. Been basically straight up, and now that's a big sell candle, and I would expect more follow through on that candle. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Apple was actually positive, up about 0.5%. Momentum still bearish, still right in the same consolidation zone. Still can't get above the trend line, but it is a little bit positive on the day. And then Tesla has not moved really at all. Still in this consolidation, slight positive day here, 1.5%. Momentum basically zero, RSI right at the midpoint. No clear direction on Tesla. It's almost like it's waiting for something, some kind of catalyst or announcement. Maybe they're waiting for the decision on Elon's pay package. Still has not been fully decided, but Tesla in a holding pattern for now. Moving over to NVIDIA and Microsoft. Look at this candle here on Microsoft. Absolutely terrible. 3.38% to the downside. Momentum almost bearish. Big volume. This came on the back of that Salesforce news, and you can see it's selling after hours. It's actually below support after hours. 413.36, and right now it's at 412.78. So that is not good. Then your next level there would be 398.59, right at the 144 EMA. And then below that, 394.22. So that looks awful. And this actually is a double top too. Did throw a little bit of a wick high, but it never really held above that level, and now we're selling off. So Microsoft looks awful, probably going to sell more. And now NVIDIA finally selling. Chart again looks still very similar to the Mag 7 chart, but big sell candle there. If this island reverses back down to that 9 EMA at 1030, that's going to be quite bearish. Momentum stepping down. Still has that earning catalyst, still didn't hit that upper trend, which is interesting, but that's a big sell candle, and you do have to keep that in mind. Moving over to Meta and Amazon, just to keep with this trend of stocks that we're watching. Meta down 1.54, Amazon down 1.48, also breaking that trend line here. Meta hasn't quite broken. It's right at that 21 EMA, but both of these look super bearish. Amazon stepping back to bearish conditions. At this point, you expect it to break down to that 174.23 level. And then if this midpoint breaks, that's going to be very bearish. You got a double top, very similar to Microsoft, selling off. This candle is a bit of an outlier, so maybe you consider your midpoint 174, but technically off of that low would be this 167 area. Both of these look quite bearish, and Meta does look a little bit better than Amazon, at least right now. Moving over to staples and discretionaries. Staples actually hung in there, 0.26. Discretionaries did as well, 0.59. Momentum on discretionaries hanging in there as well, back above 174.76. So consolidation after that big down candle on Thursday the 23rd. Momentum on staples continues to trend down. Current support is 75.76. If that breaks down, 75.40. Pretty tight window there. If this zone breaks, then you're looking at 74. And I wanted to go ahead and give this a trend line on discretionaries. It's been consolidating in the zone for a while, so we'll throw one on there from this previous low. It's holding a higher low. It's back above support. See if that holds. Right now, it's still below all of the EMAs. SMA sitting down there at 171.98, but this is interesting. It's hanging in there just like Tesla is. Moving over to transports and financials. Transports catching a bid, 0.77 up. Momentum swinging to bullish. We had a trend line here. Let's go ahead and extend those out. We hit that level there. Looking at that trend line, you can see it's kind of an ambiguous one, to be honest. Comes from this low here, touches the low on for December week. Realistically, you'd probably want to put it there. Makes a little bit more sense. From the high back in June 21 to the low here in June 24, touched that level again, found a little bit of support there. Momentum, this is the weekly chart to show that long time frame. It is still bearish, RSI still bearish, so pretty interesting there. Caught a bit of a bounce, see if it plays. It is a little bit extended as well, so transport's catching a bid. And then financials, pretty decent bounce there, about 0.5%. Momentum still bearish, but that support level, 40.77 held. Tested it yesterday, tested it again today, found a little bit of a bounce. So see how that plays. Maybe we get a bit of a swing up back to that 41.65 area. Moving over to breadth, both of these caught a little bit of a bounce as well. Nothing crazy, we've seen it before, slightly bullish candle. If this rolls down again tomorrow, that could be quite bearish. It is worth noting, we did just barely miss oversold conditions, catching a little bit of a bounce here today. We'll see how that plays. 50-day breadth also pushing back above this 40 level. Momentum hasn't rolled yet, but if we get one more candle higher, you would expect this to roll to bullish. That could be interesting. If we're back to bullish conditions on breadth, at least back into this 52 zone, that could give you a couple of day rally, something worth playing. But right now, we just haven't seen it. Moving over to the dollar, man, this thing just has no follow through. It's been crazy. We had two really powerful days, clear breakout above these highs and this trend, above all the EMAs and SMAs, and then we gave it all back here today, down 0.35. GDP numbers probably not helping. We'll see what the inflation data does tomorrow, but the dollar looking more like a consolidation with no clear pattern. And like I said, it just can't seem to follow through in either direction. Moving over to yields, both of these sold off pretty powerfully. Makes sense. GDP numbers were not great. Could see yields going lower on that news. Gives the FOMC a little bit of fuel to go lower. Momentum stepping to bearish for 2 days in a row on the 2-year. First one down here on the 10-year. Really very little momentum. So again, might see sideways consolidation. That candle yesterday was very strong on the 10-year, so you do have to respect that, but now we're right back below that level. So pretty interesting to see that. And then with that news, we still didn't see stocks really going very much higher. So the only positive index was the Russell, and the rest of these just did not look great. Moving over to bonds, as you would suspect, these caught a bit of a bid. Pretty choppy markets here, to be honest. We had a move here, clear move to here, big gap down, big gap up. So island reversal technically to the bull side. So that's interesting. Really tough to give direction, to be honest. You could argue maybe a slightly higher low with that bullish candle here today, but it just does not look great, to be honest. So maybe sideways consolidation on JNK. TLT looks a little bit better with the island reversal, but at the same time, we are below all of these EMAs and SMAs. You can see them all stacked up here. So that does not look great either. Really hard to give any kind of direction on bonds right now. Moving over to volatility, move index spiked up a little bit. VIX continues to go higher, hit that level 1470, sold off a little bit. I think this is probably going to continue to roll to bullish here. Momentum, RSI, everything looks strong on the VIX. Moving over to my accounts, I did pretty terrible today, to be honest. I just can't seem to get on top of my IRA, and I am super close to going negative on the year there, which is super upsetting. But on my main account, I did fine, down about $100. I just can't seem to trade the same way with the restrictions on an IRA, so I have to figure out how to do that a little bit better. For now, I have no positions in there, and I'll have to figure something better out. On my main account, doing fine. Normal position, 1 put, 2 sets of calls for my bearish conditions. Making some money on the calls, probably going to roll these down tomorrow if they get a little bit weak. Overall, not terrible though with the move we've been seeing. In terms of direction, I am slightly bullish in my positions, but my bias is to the downside, and you can see after hours we're down about $1. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of that GDP data. Is it going to be some fuel for the Fed, or is it just going to send markets lower? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.